Hello, everyone. This is the WIDA alternate access training. I know this should be a small group. This is for a very select group of students in our school system who will take a group of multilingual learner ML students who will take the WIDA alternate access. So at this point, I have logged in to the WIDA online training. I have filtered for the WIDA alternate access, and I have joined um, this module, this course for the WIDA alternate access. So once you jump into this is the home page. It gives you an overview. These are the modules you will go through. Introduction gives you an overview of the assessment, who is eligible for this, how to administer the assessment, how to generate score reports. Score reports typically come end of May, 1st of June every year, and the ML team will distribute those to you and to schools typically via test coordinators. But this is a good kind of primer for how to get those score reports and so on. So I want to make sure that you had access to this course. You will have to go through the online training, and you will take a quiz at the end of the online training to be able to demonstrate your knowledge. And it says here that is optional. That is a check-in quiz for that particular module. But for the entire course, there is a certification quiz that you have to pass, be able to get your certification, so you are then certified to give the access alternate assessment. So now I'm going to jump over to the Test Administrator's Manual for the alternate access. And here we are. So I'm going to scroll down to the table of contents, and we will find the alternate access. I believe it's towards the end. Yes, section 7. So I'm going to click here. That takes me to the WIDA alternate access. Now, before I get started, I want to share this yellow correction piece of paper with you. The accountability department will probably also share this with you, I would imagine, in your test administrator manual. So this is a clarification. It's a little more information from the WIDA Consortia. They wanted to remind us that there is not specific guidance in the test administrator scripts about how many times you can administer a particular item to a student taking the WIDA alternate assessment. In a nutshell, the WIDA alternate assessment gives each student multiple opportunities, 4 to 6 opportunities, to respond in various ways to each assessment, to each question, pardon me. So question 1, the child will be prompted 4, perhaps 6 times, depends on what section you're on, to give a response. And the reason, from my perspective, that WIDA does this is they want to give every student as many opportunities as possible to demonstrate, to produce the language that we can then score. So what they're doing with this clarification piece of paper is providing a little more insight into how you can repeat those prompts. And you'll see as we go through the training, it's also scripted. And the second part of this is about the writing domain word lists. So some writing domain tasks include a word list to help students construct their response. The script includes instructions to point to the word list. You can then read these words to the students for grade level clusters 6 and 8, 9 and 12, so for middle school and high school. The instruction is already included in the script for lower grades K through 5. So this is to remind you that for those middle school and high school students, we can also read those word lists. They should be in the student, in the test administrator script. So that's this yellow piece of paper, clarification from the WIDA Consortia. And again, the accountability department will probably have that or make that available to you during the training. So back to the TAM, the fun TAM, the test administrator's manual. So the alternate access, this is an assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities, multilingual learner students with significant cognitive disabilities. The first part of the TAM gives you an overview of the assessment. So there are 5 different, we call them language standards. The language for social and instructional purposes, math, science, language arts, and social studies. So we are assessing language for these content areas, and then social and instructional purposes. And you will find that in the alternate access as well. And it gives you some information about the different components. So there are 10 items for listening, 10 for reading, 8 for speaking, 8 for writing. And so that's a combined, 36 total items. And those items span the proficiency levels of 1 to 5. Even though for the alternate access, there are lower proficiency levels specifically for the alternate access. So this assessment is administered individually, and it is adaptive based on how the child responds. Will let you know where you go next in that assessment. Ergo, for some more advanced students, it may take a little bit longer. For some students who are really on the lower end of developing their English skill, it may go a little bit faster. And you are the only person who evaluates and scores the student's response based on a very simple rubric, or very simple rubrics that you will see in this part of the Test Administrator Manual. So moving on to page 75. The assessment is given in 4 testing sessions, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Each domain will take about 30 minutes. So that gives you an idea for students who perhaps don't have as much language to share. It may go faster. For students who need a little bit more time, it may take longer. But this is an untimed assessment. This how the student navigates the assessment, how they respond, really dictates to you how long this assessment will take. Test materials that you need: the script, the test booklet, and the student response booklet. And the accountability department will share those with you. And it gives you some information about you can adapt the test booklet because we know that oftentimes students who are taking the alternative assessment, access assessment, may need different adaptations and have different learning needs. But if you need to adapt the test booklet, work with the accountability department, and this gives you a little insight to how you can adapt that, how you can cut it apart, how you can rearrange the test booklet. But do not adapt the student response booklet. So that's where you're collecting those scores, and that should not be taken apart or modified in any way. So accommodations. The alternate access is very flexible, so keep in mind that many of these accommodations that are appropriate or may be useful for the regular access may not be applicable for the alternate access, because the whole test is administered one-on-one by you, somebody that is familiar with the student, and it's not timed. And any regular accommodations that the child needs related to test audio and human readers, that would not apply to the alternate access, because this test is administered by human, not by a computer, and so those accommodations may not be necessary for the child while they're taking the alternate access. So this is really information for the test coordinator, but it gives you a little more information about how to help the student prepare for testing, and also preparing the testing space. If the child is using assistive technology, I should have highlighted this, they can use that assistive technology for testing. So if they're using this assistive technology to perhaps produce sound or produce speech, they can use that assistive technology for the alternate access. And that also touches on the augmentative communication devices based on the individual needs of the students. There's a section here. I'm not going to read that to you in detail, but I just wanted to point it out to you. So, and this is just a reminder, we would not provide a special accommodation just for a particular test. So such an arrangement would be not representative of what the student is experiencing day to day. So if this is not an accommodation that the child uses on a regular basis, then, or a device that they use on a regular basis, augmentative device, then they wouldn't need, or they wouldn't use that on the alternate access. So this just kind of highlights that distinction. So this gets into administering the assessment. I highly recommend with the alternate access that typically it would be the child's teacher administering the alternate access because you're in tune to that child. You probably know those that child's communication cues, that child's communication modalities, that child's communication needs better than anyone. So you would pick up as the child's teacher or somebody that works very closely with that child. If it's not the child's teacher, you will be more in tune to the way that child communicates, and that will help you more accurately score the response that you're getting from the child. So this just reminds you during the next section to follow the test administrator script exactly. This is a very scripted assessment. It is not that difficult to give. You have the option to transcribe student responses, but it is an option, and you will see that in the student response booklet. It's not required, but it may help you score the child's responses if you transcribe them. But again, it is not required unless North Carolina testing regulations say that it is required, and my friends in the accountability department can confirm that for you, but as far as I know, it is not required that we transcribe student responses. There are breaks available to the students between the different domains. When I say domain, I'm talking about the listening domain, speaking domain, reading domain, and the writing domain. So there are 4 different domains of language in so much as when we're discussing the alternate access. So this is what the score sheet looks like for the alternate access. You stop a domain. Remember, a domain, there's a listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You stop a domain when a child approaches on 3 consecutive tasks. And approaches means incorrect. So incorrect and approaches are synonymous for the purposes of scoring this assessment. So take this example, and I believe this is a listening component. So in this item, or this particular domain, the child was able to respond correctly when they received the second cue, QB. They were incorrect on task 2, incorrect on task 3, but then they got the next one correct. So that resets the clock, so to speak. And then they got 3 consecutive incorrect. So at that point, I would end this part of the test, this domain of the test, and I would bubble in not administer for the subsequent items. So just remember, the student has to receive 3 incorrect scores in a row to finish that particular part. It's also important to note on this page, the note down at the bottom that points out that when you have not administered something, make sure you fill in the little circle, not administered. So moving on, how to administer the listening and reading tests. So back to this piece of paper that was reminding us of the possibilities, the different cues, the different how many times a child would be able to respond. This gets into some of the details about those responses. So for the listening and reading tasks, you basically have a task that you present to the student. You read through, you read QA, then you repeat QA. Then if they don't respond, you read QB. If there's no response, then you read QC. So under this part of the assessment, listening and reading tests, according to TAM, the child will have 4 different chances to respond to one item. So let me repeat, 4 different chances to respond to one item. And that's a good thing because we want to give the student as many opportunities as we can to elicit speech that we can then score, or elicit a response that we can then score. And so you would simply score that based on when the child responds, if it's under QA, QB, or QC. And